Welcome to Quilt Blocks on American Barns. I'm Eleanor Burns. Well, today I have a very creative barn quilt to share with you. Now, this quilt was made by Nancy Gilman, and she named it Berkeley Barns. Well, I think Nancy was too young to remember what it was like in Berkeley, California in the 1960s, but she captured the essence of the free spirit. Well, I love the happy dogs. She stitched very happy dogs to the front of her monitor barn. Well, they look like they've been partying all night among the flowers. And then instead of blades on the windmill, Nancy chose one large flower for flower power. And the quilting is great with echo quilting and earthly clouds. In the Gothic roof barn, the bigger-than-life chickens are standing at attention with the word love quilted on the block above. Now, do you remember all those happy faces cheering us on in hard times? The farmer's daughter block is plastered with happy faces in multiple colors, plus there's colorful flowers appliqued on top, really cute. Well, living in the bank barn are surfers. Well, I know because they left their surfboards outside waiting for some cool waves. And that flying kite block just brightens their home. Well, the quilting is phenomenal on Dora's Delight. The arty work was done by Tim Coldera and Robert Olsebeck from Rags to Riches in Orange County, California. And just dig those Martians hanging out in the Dutch barn. Looks like purple people eaters to me. And they are liking that watermelon. Well, there are some flowers quilted in the tie-dye background. Just a great setting for Berkeley. And then another happy dog is watching the view from the hayloft. He's perched above the flying geese block. The silo boasts a love sign. This whole quilt is just great fun. And we can't miss the happy face in the Americana star, a symbol of self-expression in the United States. Well, I'm happy too because we're finishing our barn quilt today. Let's get started. Start with the monitor barn in the very center. And this barn is my favorite one because it has my 3 grandchildren riding on one tricycle. It just makes me think of them. They're so cute. Now, there are 2 different ways that you could go. First of all, you could take your letter panel and just sew it right to the top of the monitor barn. I love this design wall because I can just smooth it all and step back and see how it looks. That would look good if you want to have the American barn letters. Or the second way is to take your 3 6.5-inch blocks, sew them together with 2.5-inch by 6.5-inch blocks, lattice in between, into one row like this. Make sure you leave room for a 2.5-inch lattice right here. And then whatever width this is, this should be exactly the same in the lattice. Now, this is actually 26.5 inches. I'm giving you measurements based on my seam allowance. Yours may be different. But get your center all sewn together and then lay out the rest of your quilt. Sew 2 blocks on each side of the monitor barn with 2.5-inch by 12.5-inch lattice between blocks. Sew the top row together with a barn on each end and 2 blocks plus lattice in between. Sew a row with 4 blocks and 2.5-inch lattice between the blocks if you want a rectangular quilt. Sew the bottom row together with a barn on each end and 2 blocks between the barns. Add long 2.5-inch lattice between the rows. Remember to keep the blocks in vertical rows. And the last thing to do is add the top, bottom, and side lattice. And your top is ready for the checkerboard border. I have another creative quilt made by one of my students, Peggy Sproul. And I love what she did because she turned hers into a rectangle. It's perfect. She has 10 6-inch blocks all around this big old monitor barn. She's got her little barns right in each one of the corners, and her detail is wonderful. I love the little dog here playing with the duck. She's got a rooster sitting on her monitor barn. And a button right here in her windmill. Perfect. The cows are fun here. Oh my gosh, what a herd of them. And then, of course, she's got to have her tractor right up here with a pig. So much fun. And then she surrounded her whole quilt with this split rail fence. Well, the split rail was designed by Arlene Stamper from here in San Diego, but it just sets the whole quilt off. It looks like a little ranch, like someplace you would love to visit. Well, there's one more part of the quilt I'd like to show you, and that's the lettering. You can actually have a panel that says American Barns. Now, it's just done on paperback fusible web. You can go ahead and trace your letters on the smooth side of paperback fusible. Put the fusible side against the wrong side of the fabric, and I actually have mine printed. Sure makes it a lot easier. So just put the fusible against the wrong side, and at this point be very careful. You can only fuse for 2 seconds. If you fuse longer than 2 seconds, chances are you may just totally destroy that glue. You'll never be able to fuse again. So once you've got it fused down, then all you have to do is just take these letters, cut around them, trim completely, and then take on the wrong side and just scratch along there, take a pin, but all you want to do is release that paper, peel it away. Oh, I've nearly got it. There, it's coming. Okay, if you can see the sticky stuff, and put it right in place. Well, I took a piece that is 8.5 inches by 28 inches, and I just pressed in the center line, a second line 2.5 inches up. So I just laid everything out and just eyeing it, making sure that it's perfect. At this point, you can fuse for 8 seconds. This is the second time around. Just go straight down with your iron, straight down, move it along, time yourself, and then once these letters are all fused in place, you can do a satin stitch around the outside edge. Got to hold them in place, looking good. Or if you have an embroidery machine, you can go ahead and do your own embroidery work. Perfect. Finally, we're ready to start. Got everything laid out that I need. So your barn, your monitor barn on a queen size quilt is actually 18.5 by 26.5. Check it out, measure it, make sure it's good. And then everything else is either all 12.5 or 6.5. You've got your 4 different barns, they're all 12.5. And then your blocks are also 12.5. Take a 12.5-inch square up ruler, place them under each one, check it out, make sure that it's perfect, see if you need to repress from the back side or do a little letting out seams or a taking in seams. So if you want to have a lap robe size, you can just go ahead and do 12 blocks or 16. I'll show you the difference. And then some 6.5-inch to put right underneath the monitor barn. Okay, got all my things ready. Let me lay out my blocks. I have my 2 rows that are going to go vertically beside the monitor barn, and it's so easy to do. I have my lattice in between the 2 rows. Now, I really like to sew with my block on the top, because that way I can just go ahead and sew that exact same seam over and over again and lay the seams just as I press them. So I'm just line it up, use your stiletto, and just make sure when you get to those seams, no flipping out seams. Nothing worse than flipped out seams. So once you start, you anchor at the top and then just go to the opposite end, line up those 2 edges, and then just sew right down along there. Pretty simple to do. Now the seam is actually set and pressed towards the lattice. Okay, and I like to jump up and down. It's good exercise, and actually do that step in between each one. So just set the seam, and I love seam. Set the seam, open, and press. And then just go ahead and go on. I constantly check and make sure I have everything in the exact perfect direction. Okay, so flip this one, right sides together, got the seams on top, just zip right along there. You know, I have so many barn trails that I want to go on. I've been collecting the travel brochures, and the travel brochures, oh, they look so appealing that you just can't wait to go to that state. I'm so anxious to go on the Appalachian Trail. I think that would be a great one to take. And then every time my friends go to Wisconsin, they bring back a brochure on the Wisconsin Barn Trail. And then there's Kelowna in Iowa, and oh my gosh, and there's Sac County in Iowa. Well, I've got a whole stack about that high of all of these barn trails. So when you're planning on being in the area, or if you just want to make the trip, head on out to one of those barn trails. Okay, this is my first vertical row. I'm just going to cut off that little jumper scrap. Once again, turn it and put your lattice on top, set the seam, and then you just open and press right into the lattice. Ooh, and make sure you didn't cut off any tips. Those are looking good. Well, these are the two vertical rows for beside the monitor barn. But I've been working. I actually sewed most of my top together, and this is the bottom two rows on the quilt. And I actually found out one time I was sitting and sewing, getting all my rows together, and I stopped and looked, and my blocks were all kind of crooked going along. So this is the technique that I want you to use. I have the lattice on the top, and let me turn this one around. It goes like this. The lattice is on the top. It's 2.5-inch lattice. The lattice is on the top of this row. And what I want to do is line up these seams so that whenever you have your whole top together, the blocks are all in straight rows. You can do it one of two ways. You can take a ruler and take a disappearing pen, line up your ruler on the bottom one, and just put a little tick mark there. Move it along and put another little tick mark there. These are going to line up perfectly when you flip it. Or you could go ahead and use a Hera marker. This is one that won't leave a mark, so line up the ruler right here. Take a little tick mark, make it nice and sharp, and then go right here and do the same. Keep on marking the whole way across there. And then all you have to do to make sure the rows are lined up is take this, flip it right sides together, fold that back, get it all lined up, pin it in place, and then sew with this side on the top so that you have all of those seams lined up and it's looking good. Let me just put the pins right in here and squeeze that together. And this is going to look great. Now, I already cut my lattice strips before I even started at 54.5 inches. And this is the reason why I did that. I did all my math. I do everything by math. The blocks are finished size at 12. So you've got 4 12-inch blocks. Okay, 4 times 12, 48. And then I had 1, 2, 3 lattice. They start out at 2.5 inches. Their finished size is 2 inches. So I added 6 inches onto 48. The new number is 54. Then you need to add 1/4 of an inch on each end, a 1/2 inch. So that's why I cut my lattice at 54.5. And you can do that too, as long as your blocks end up at 12 inches and 2 inches. Then everything's going to fit perfectly. Let me get my top done and I'll show you the checkerboard. We're nearly up to the finish line. We just have that checkerboard border to do. And it's easy because it comes from just two different colors of fabric, the red and the white. Now you want to cut strips, salvage to salvage, at 2.5 inches. And I always feel that I'm showing off when I show this step. But I love this tool for cutting 2.5-inch strips as fast as I can. It only has little slots in it every 2.5 inches, so you can't go wrong. Well, I took the edge at 0 and I lined it up about 1/2 inch in so that I can just go ahead, put my cutter right in that 0 slot, cut halfway up, move your hand, and finish off the rest, because all I want to do is just take these edges and get rid of them. Now, all you have to do is just cut 2.5 inches across. No way to make a mistake. And the best thing is, with this fabric, with this large cutting tool, then you don't actually have to fold your fabric into 4. You can just have it in 2 layers and cut along. So that's enough showing off, I think. I want to show you how good those pieces look. Perfect. Ooh, have to set these aside for my next quilt, because now I'm going to take my strips and I just need to have 2 sets. I'm just showing you with half strips, but basically let's put 2 reds here like this, and right in the middle put a white. That's the first section that you have to do, and then the next one you have to do white with red in the middle. And this is the next one. Get it all laid out. And if you are going to do a queen size quilt, you need to have 5 full strips in each one of these. That is a lot of strip sewing, but it just goes together quickly. Just sew 5 sets of each one of them, and you're ready for the next step. I've got everything in my oven already. So now here I have the section with the white, red, white. Press the seams in towards the red on this one. And then the second set, red, white, red. Push the sections towards red. Now layer them up, put the red on the bottom, the 2 reds on the bottom, and take this section and roll it in. I just line up the outside edges and then just feel, because if it's flat, then those seams are locked together. This goes really good. Oh, yep, check. Okay, they're locked there. And then once again, let's put the red, and I think I'll even stagger a second set. I'm still showing off. So now take this one and line it up again. Just line the outside edges, smooth along there, and it's locked in place. And the ruler comes back out again. We can just cut these into 2.5-inch sections in a jiffy. Okay, I'm at 0. I have a little to the left of it. I always do that straightening cut. And then just go ahead, cut every 2.5 inches. Well, the reason that I am so excited about this is because my friend Chris did not wait for me to give her the directions, and she actually cut 402 2.5-inch squares and sewed them together one by one. Strippings for me. So now we have pairs right here, so we're just going to peel them up and take them to the sewing machine. You can make a stack of them. They're perfect. They're ready to go. So now I've got to clear off my chair so I can sit down. They are already locked in place, but do use your stiletto. It's easier right now just to feed them right through, one after the other. Feel, if it's flat, it's good. And then when you go to the next one, I see just about 1/8 of an inch showing in the red. So if you have to pick it up and give a little pull on it, do that. Just keep on going, line them up. Line them right behind each other. Well, Chris cut all of those squares. It looked exactly the same whenever we were done, but took her a lot of time. Doing it like this is so much quicker. So just keep on assembly line sewing until you have 67 pairs. That is a lot. And then just go back, cut them apart, and don't even press it this time. All you need to do is just take them, open them up, and continue sewing those two pairs together. Make 2 stacks and just keep on going until they're as long as the side and the top and bottom. Remember, you can measure your side and divide by 2 so you know how many of these little pieces that you need to make. And then the last step is to make your little roosters and your chickens. I made the chickens and the roosters using that same fusible method as I did when I made the letters. You've got 2 of each, and all you want to do is actually sew these on the ends of the tops, these on the ends of the bottoms, put them on your quilt top, and you're done. Well, I hope you have as much fun making your barn quilt as I did making mine. I'm having great fun today playing with my grandson Jonas and his barn. This is a good barn, huh? Look, there's the sheep. Well, Jonas is 1.5. You're a pretty big boy. And he's the son of Grant and Himna. And Ellie is his sister. Can you say Ellie, huh? Can you say Ellie? Well, my friend Brian and I love barns, and we gave this barn to Jonas so that he would learn to love them too. Look, where's the cow? There's a cow. What's the cow say, huh? What's the cow say? Moo. Say moo. And what's this? That's the sheep, huh? Well, maybe Jonas will help us with our timber frame barn we're building on my property in Julian, California. Oh, what else is in here? Let me see. Oh, nope, all gone. Let's turn it around. Let's put the horsey in there. Okay. Well, Brian and I are members of the Timber Frame Guild. We've attended conferences across the country and toured many barns. Well, for me, hanging out with the timber framers is different than hanging out with the quilters. That's the goat, huh? But both groups are passionate about our work or hobby. You know, it's wonderful to be involved with rebuilding and preserving a piece of our American history. It's never too early to get our young ones interested. Push the tractor, huh? Well, either in barns or quilting. So enjoy your work. This fun? On July 7th, 2007, dozens of volunteers, including my friend Brian, arrived in Springfield, Ohio for a 3-week workshop hosted by the Timber Framers Guild. Volunteers came prepared for an old-fashioned barn raising. They stocked their tool bags with simple hand tools, eager to construct the barn the way they would have built it in the 1800s. At the George Rogers Clark Historical Park was the foundation of a 40 by 60 foot Pennsylvania-style bank barn and a complete farmhouse. The properties were originally owned by a wealthy Mennonite farmer named Daniel Herzl. His family and friends had constructed the buildings in 1854. The barn stood proud for nearly 100 years until it was dismantled in 1951, leaving just the foundation. Well, the farmhouse still stands today and attracts many visitors to the park. When a similar barn nearby was scheduled for demolition, the Clark County Park District decided to rescue it. The Timber Framers Guild jumped into action. Guild member Rudy Christian and his company, Christian and Son, were instrumental in the detailed reconstruction plans of the barn. Rudy decided what timbers could be salvaged and how many new timbers were needed for the reconstruction. It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Each timber is cut to size and length. Joints are precisely chiseled so the next timber will match together. It's just like locking your seams. The joints rest together perfectly. Holes are then drilled for wooden dowels. Where large nails would have been used, the dowels are pounded in with an even larger mallet. Just go look at them. Look at them go. As the 3 weeks came to a close, the barn came together. Each volunteer went home with an education and a donut.